Welcome to the Elephant Room, where we tackle the unspoken, uncomfortable, and unseen truth. Join Linda Carmouche, your host, a licensed therapist, mental wellness strategist, and speaker, going beyond titles, addressing the emotional scars, hidden trauma, fears, and the silent battles many professionals face but rarely discuss. Come on in. The Elephant Room, where vulnerability meets strength. Hit subscribe and connect with hope, healing, and the courage to address the elephant in the room. Remember, the content here is for informational purposes only. Seek help from a qualified professional for mental health concerns, and discretion is advised for sensitive topics.
Come on in the Elephant Room tonight, because we have a conversation that's about to be on fire. Let me tell you, we have therapist Danny Ross with us tonight. And y'all, I can't hold my peace. Let me tell you something. He's going to share with us some nuggets, some wisdom, some guidance. He's going to talk about some things that he himself has had to work through. You see, a lot of the times when you think about a therapist, you think we don't have no stuff that we got to work through. But let me tell you something. We are human first. We are people first before we are professionals. And he's just going to go ahead and pull back that layer tonight and let you in on a couple of tidbits about his journey. Sometimes people ask, why would you do a session that is focused directly toward Black men? It is because there are some things that Black men experience that other men from other races don't. And it may be experienced in a different way. So tonight we're going to honor our brothers, our African American brothers. And so I'm going to ask you to like, to share. If you know a Black man, you have given birth to a Black man, you love a Black man, even if you kind of like a Black man, I want you to go ahead and invite them to tonight's episode of the Elephant Room. Let's go ahead and welcome our guests, y'all, because I can't wait to get it started. Come on in the room, Danny.
Hello. How are you, Linda?
I am doing amazingly well. I cannot wait to jump into our topic tonight and talk about how grief touches the hearts of Black men and how it oftentimes shows up. So I'm going to give you a little bit. I shared earlier today all of the greatness that you're bringing to the table. And you have not only experienced one close death or two close deaths, but multiple close deaths. And I cannot thank you enough for allowing us into your heart space, because I know that it's not always that people have to share. So I'm so glad that you're here tonight, Danny. So let's go ahead and I want you to say something to the brothers real quick to welcome them onto the podcast.
Awesome. Brothers, I am so excited that you're here tonight. I know this sometimes is a conversation that's uncomfortable for us, but I want you to hang in there with Linda and I really want you to engage in this conversation, because I'm all about healing. I'm all about creating that safe space so that we really can have those honest conversations that need to be had amongst us. And I also talk about, in my group, I talk about sometimes we have to create that space that's safe for us. So I appreciate Linda giving me this platform in the Elephant Room. I so love that title, because we're gonna walk in here and address the elephant related to men and grief in the room. So I just appreciate you, brothers, for being here. We want you to engage. I want to hear what you have to say. And I really want us to have some dialogue so that we can really have an enjoyable conversation for the evening.
That's good. And I'm going to say thank you, sisters, for logging in, because so many times we don't know how to engage with the men that we love. We don't know what to say when they're hurting, or when we know they've lost someone that is really close to them. We don't know what to say. And sometimes saying the wrong thing can hurt as bad as not saying anything at all. So we're going to dig in and we're going to have some conversation, and I'm going to put Danny on the hot seat.
Okay.
And so the
Okay.
first thing I'm going to ask you, I know that you had a significant loss in your early years. And
Mm-hmm.
last week we talked about how grief can impact children,
Mm-hmm.
especially when it is not processed as
Yes.
a child. So I want you to just share as much of your journey as a little boy with us as you'd like. And I want y'all to get in the comments and talk to
Yeah.
us and give us some feedback.
Talk to us. Thank you, Linda. I really want to get into that. I'm so glad you asked about that because I feel like that's the premise of everything that I am, who I've become, why I do what I do. When I was about 4 years old, about to turn 5, um, basically my dad died, and not that I knew that he died, but I knew he was in and out of the hospital. I just have glimpses and remembrances of seeing him in and out of the hospital. I knew he laid around a lot. I know he was sleeping a lot. But Linda, in that, nobody ever told me what was going on, what was happening. And all I remember is I'm at a funeral. I'm at a funeral, probably, at the end of this. I remember people were crying, and I remember vividly my brother had on this. I guess he was fixing his bike, but somebody had on this multicolored jumpsuit, and he was fixing his bike, and he was crying. And I said, that didn't go together. I knew that picture did not go together from the insight of a 5-year-old. And so all I knew, a week later, I'm going to a funeral and everybody is crying around me. And all I remember, Linda, is somebody saying, take him out before the coffin comes down. And I remember being midsection in the church, and they started pulling me over the benches, and I'm out of the church. And so I remember being at home, and I remember me and food have always had this wonderful relationship, but I remember all the wonderful dishes that were coming to the house, and I'm like, why are they bringing all this good food to us? But nobody ever took the time to talk to me about what was happening to my dad. I think, we talk about attachment styles and attachment history and things like that. I think it left a void in me. I think it left a lot of unanswered questions. I think as a man, it kept me reaching for things and wanting to be the best, being overly driven, being that perfectionist, anticipating things so I don't mess up. All of that is because I felt no one thought enough of me to have the conversation about the death of my dad. So
Wow.
I internalized it. I thought it had something to do with me. And you know how we do in the church. You smile, you grin, you bear it, and the Lord will take care of our burdens. And I'm just like, I sometimes want us to stop that, because for a 4 or 5-year-old kid, they have no knowledge as to what that means for them.
Danny, you're doing too much already.
Already,
I
Linda.
can't keep up with you. This is too good. This is
Yeah.
too good.
Mhm.
Let me make sure I heard you right.
Uh-huh.
You said because there was absolutely nobody that sit you down and said,
No.
little Danny,
Mm-hmm.
let me help you understand that daddy is gone forever. You took the bits and pieces that you saw
Mm-hmm.
that wasn't your everyday interactions around the house,
Exactly.
and you took it and internalized that
Mm-hmm.
something was wrong
Exactly.
with you, so you had to work really hard
Mm-hmm.
to show up and be seen.
Exactly. That is a great way of compiling all of that information. I worked hard to be seen my entire life.
Mm.
And then on top of that, Linda, I'm from a family of 8. And I'm next to the youngest. So imagine me trying to find my way and understand what's happening, because nobody really paid attention to, we call them the little ones. and that was my sister and me, and nobody really paid attention to us. I guess they just thought we were going to get it by osmosis, but it was a lot of unanswered questions, and I think life gave me a lot of unanswered questions, and that was my baseline. That was my premise.
Okay, we got to go back. We got to
Go back.
First of all, you talked about attachment styles. For the person who has never ever heard of an attachment style, for a man particularly, what is that? What does it mean?
Right. Well, most times when we have these attachment styles, and I can't give you it's just escaped me, but I'll give you the idea of what's behind it.
I just want the layman's terms.
The layman's terms.
Paint the picture for me.
Okay. Well, the layman's term is when I have a healthy relationship, when I'm understanding of things, when my parents talk to me, when they see me, when they make me feel valued, when I feel heard, when I feel wanted. That's that secure attachment style that we all strive to be. And then when we don't have those other attachment style, we have these anxious attachment styles, and we have like the neglected attachment style to where I don't need anybody. I don't want to do. And I see that sometimes with a lot of men because nobody ever really paid attention to them. They have learned how to do everything on their own. And so when we get into relationships, Linda, what tends to happen is, well, I'm the man, I'm supposed to do this, but you're supposed to be in relationship. You're supposed to have that emotional intimacy. We're supposed to have that connection. And one of the biggest things, and shut me up, Linda, I have so much to say.
I have so much I want to ask.
One of the things I love to do is called wise mind. There's the emotional end of our minds, and then there's the rational end of our minds. And most men, we think with probably about 75% of the rational. And so what I try to do with my men, I try to get them to go 75% at least into that emotional mind. And then with my women, I try to get them to cross over to that more rational so we can have an understanding of what's really, really going on. But all of that is connected to our attachments.
Okay. Let me tell you, the listeners are saying, you talking some good stuff, sir. That's what they're telling you right now. You're talking some good stuff, sir. Okay. So when you talk about a healthy attachment, what I hear you saying is because of your experience with losing your father at what we call foundational years,
exactly,
which only means you're building your foundation. You're trying to figure out who Danny is. Because you lost him, there was a disconnect. Because when somebody dies, something is disconnected.
Exactly.
And when there was a disconnect, nobody came in and connected the dots for you. So that means as a man, you can grow up, and as much as you're trying to attach to other people, other relationships, what happened in those foundational years can impact how you attach, which means sometimes you're making the attempt to attach, but something keeps happening and you're not quite not quite attaching.
It's funny you say that, because if I could go back and speak to my younger self at around that age and ask for what I needed somebody to pour into me. I needed somebody to tell me I was valued. I needed someone to tell me that daddy didn't leave because of me. I needed somebody to tell me that daddy loved me, daddy cared about me. But to this day, you know this, Linda, I still have that conversation as that 4 or 5-year-old trying to seek that validation. And I think I worked my tail off as a therapist working with Black men because I understand it so well, how the foundational things, when they're not there, they cause such turmoil in all of our relationships. So that's a huge piece.
Oh, this is so good. Because oftentimes, and I'm going to talk, since we're talking about Black men,
Mhm.
we're going to go ahead and talk about the culture in our
Yeah.
families. Oftentimes in our families, we are not taking time to say, little Danny,
Mhm.
Daddy was sick and now
Right.
he's gone.
Exactly.
Sometimes we're just moving because we think children don't know. We think children don't hear. They don't see.
Mhm.
When the reality is children are having their own experience and we have to give language. You said if you could go back and speak for the little boy, that
Mhm.
you would say certain things. You would ask for what you needed. Most 4 and 5 year olds don't even know what they need.
Don't. We don't know what we need. We
So
don't know
they
what.
rely on the adults in their lives to see them.
But I want to interject here. Just because chronologically I'm 35, oftentimes the little boy speaks for me at 35 when I have not developed a language. And so I, in turn, cannot ask for what I need, Linda, even at 35.
And you are a licensed therapist.
Licensed. Mhm. Mhm.
That's why we have to understand that just because don't see me professionally as one thing and forget that I'm also having my own personal experience.
Exactly. Exactly.
We're
You
still
know,
human.
you know how I worked through that though? I was in years and years of therapy. Let me just put that out. I went to therapy and I'm now just coming to the place to where I feel as though I understand me. I had to give me a master's in counseling to somewhat start the
Oh,
process.
that's so good.
And I was like, so why was this not discussed in our families? Like emotions, feelings. You have a right to say what you need from others. You have a right to say how you feel. Mm-mm. No, that
Oh,
was not
this is
my.
so good. This is
That was
so
not my
good.
goal.
This is so good. So if you're just joining us, Danny and I are hanging out and we're talking about how unresolved grief often impacts the Black man.
Mhm,
And Danny just shared with us that he was impacted by grief, the death of his dad, very
mhm,
early on. Now, we're going to leave the little boy, but we're not leaving him yet
mhm. Okay,
because
okay.
some Black men lost their dad and they're grieving the dad not by death.
Mm-hmm,
They're grieving him because he was never there. He
mm-hmm,
didn't show up. Do
mm-hmm.
you feel, talk to me about grief of a dad not by death?
I was thinking about there's so much disenfranchised grief and complicated grief.
Mhm.
And I often think about the complicated grief being like we talk about there's a clinical term for complicated grief to where you can't get over the death. It's prolonged. But then there's also another complication with the grief when there are certain subjects we can't talk about, but we're supposed to be healing. Dad is incarcerated. Dad did something very, very bad that we can't talk about, but love your dad. We're sending these mixed messages and saying heal at the same time, but don't talk about it. And so what I want to say, it is so difficult to try to heal when the grief is so ambiguous. We don't even know what it is that we're trying to move past or what we're trying to work on. So the first step is acknowledging I'm grieving.
Yes,
I'm
yes.
I'm hurting. There's a part of me that's missing that I don't even have the words to. I have a friend, and what she used to always say when she didn't know I'm just feeling some kind of way. So I like to throw that term in there. I'm just feeling some kind of way until we can add the words to
Yes.
help the person understand. There are words that can help you get to that place that you need to get.
This is good. And this is why when you approach therapy,
Mm-hmm.
it's important to get rid of the timeline
Mm-hmm.
because I may come in to talk about grief that I'm experiencing right now, but
Mm-hmm.
when the therapist helps me pull back all the layers to the onion, then I
Mm-hmm.
realize my grief really started 30 years ago when I was a little boy.
Exactly. Exactly.
Oftentimes people say, well, I don't need to pay and go to therapy. I can talk to my friend. But your friend is not trained
Mhm.
to help you pull back the onions.
Exactly.
Oftentimes the friend helps you keep recycling and reliving the very thing that's hurting you.
Mhm. Or what they'll do, they'll also just affirm the story and make it put it in a place to where it feels good for them. Oh, you'll get over it. You'll be fine. You're
Yes,
strong. You're that.
yes, yes.
And instead of actually tuning in, and we do that quite well as men. We don't hear each other's stories. Think about when we go to the bar. Think about when we go to the game. All of those things are facades. They're
Mm,
facades and illusions for I do communicate, I do connect with my brother. But I asked someone the other day, I said, and it was my dad and I have a great relationship. I said, so are y'all talking about some of the things we're talking about today? And they were like, no. I said, let's reframe that. What would that look like to truly have that relationship that
mm.
you can talk about these things that we're talking about with your dad? How much better can that relationship be when you really go a bit deeper and don't keep it up here on the surface? Sometimes, Linda, we're so scared that we're going to be judged.
Yes.
We're going to be judged.
Yes.
We're so fearful that we won't look the part.
Yeah.
We won't look the way that the man is supposed to look. We have these archetypes, these preset ideas. We got to do a workshop on that because that's a whole different beast.
And I think the more we climb the professional ladder,
Mm-hmm.
the harder it is to come down and connect and be vulnerable and all of that. I'm going to take corporate out and say the more we climb the ladder, because sometimes it's the more we climb the ladder in the church house.
Come on, come on, come on,
And I
come on.
want everybody to think I have it all together. This is what the elephant room is about. Everybody got an elephant or
Everybody,
two. And if
everybody.
we come into the room and we take off our mask, I can sit next to you without judgment and say, I'm glad you're here. Because
Mm,
I want to see you heal just like I want to heal.
exactly.
One of the listeners said, healing in silence.
Wow.
Healing in silence. Can we genuinely heal on an
And
island in
right.
silence?
Well, you really somebody said, and I'm not going to take credit to this, but they said the healing is in the words. Healing is
Mm,
in the words, and I think about the therapy room. I think about it's such a healing space. It's heard so much. It's seen so much. I think that that place is one of the most sacred places in my life because people come in and they tell their stories. It's
yes,
something about saying things out
yes,
loud
yes, yes,
really make it real for you. It connects with you. It says, oh, this truly is my story. This really did happen to me. Or
yes.
this is something I'm not acknowledging and I have to start acknowledging it.
And the good book says confess with your mouth.
Come on.
There is something about saying it because
Mhm,
sometimes it lives so long in your head
mhm.
that it becomes something that it's not. Sometimes we have to give words to it.
We have to give words to it. You just said something. I often talk to my guys. I say a lot of times we're thinking things in our heads, but I said, has that translated to your partner? Have you talked to them about that particular thing that's circling up in your head? No, you're just thinking it, bro. You're just thinking it, but you hadn't transferred that information and you're wondering why they don't understand.
Are we going to go there and talk about the partners already?
I'm, I'm all over the place, but bring me back in, man. Bring me in.
Because sometimes we cannot support our partners because they're in their head and
Mhm,
we have no idea where to go, what to
mhm,
say, how to support you, when to support you. Do you want to be alone? Do you want to be together? And let me go ahead and just go and step out on this cliff since I'm out here. When we don't know what to do, we begin to create our own stories in our heads. And sometimes it's a story that does not align with what's going on in your head.
Ooh, that's good. That's good. That's good. I use what we call emotionally focused therapy. The premise of that with couples is I have created a story. I basically give that story life and I act on that story, but I hadn't included anybody else in my story but me. I have lived the entire story without including my partner. And when I say partner, I'm talking about your work buddy too.
Yes.
She's talking about me. She looking at me a certain way. I don't know why that man. He think I'm. Ain't nobody thinking about you.
Yeah. Not thinking about you have come in and upset the elephant room.
We upset it. Don't stop, elephant. Don't stop.
Because the truth is, when you're hurting, we want to be there. We want to support you. We want to love on you. We want to be an ear or a shoulder. But a lot of the times we're paying for whatever happened at 4, 5, or 6. I think we get caught up and we're worried about you cheating, but we're not worried about you cheating all the time. Sometimes I'm worried that you're in your head and the suicide rate is going up.
It's going up. Come on,
among Black men.
You're exactly.
Sometimes I'm worried because I know you're depressed. I see the symptoms, but you keep saying nothing is wrong. We have to begin to open our mouths. And if we truly love the other person, we got to be able to talk to them about the pain that we're feeling. Otherwise, we can't grow.
We can't grow. We can't grow.
We can't heal.
No, not at all.
And the little boy or the little girl keeps standing up. We gotta acknowledge it. We gotta acknowledge it.
And we keep having inaccurate messages. I want you to think about how early my inaccurate message started, because nobody asked me. And you were saying earlier, I'm like, why don't you ask me what I need? I'll gladly tell you.
This is
don't
true.
give me roses and I don't need roses.
This is true.
You
buy roses and I don't even like them.
Exactly. You can just give me that $25 and I'll have me a good lunch tomorrow. That'll make me feel thought of, cared for.
Yeah.
See?
But you know what is so interesting about what you've shared from the little boy, Danny, is how impactful it is for us to be intentional about what our children are experiencing and not discount it.
Exactly.
Because when we discount it, we set them up for a journey that is a lot harder for them than it really has to be.
Wow.
Think of how much work you did to show up and be seen by people that could have easily been discarded had someone sit you down and had a heart-to-heart conversation about a significant loss that you'd had.
I think culture plays such a big part in this. And I come from a small country town in Mississippi.
Come on, Mississippi.
Mississippi. Probably about 25,000 people total. That's with all the little sub towns. And so I remember when I took my first teaching job in the classroom as a classroom teacher, and I worked in an elementary school, and it was a predominantly white school. And I saw the little boy walking down the hall with his dad holding his hand. And then here's the big piece. When he dropped him off, he kissed him on the lips. I was just like floored, because in my culture, that is a no-no. That's taboo. But But think about that young man that I
Mhm.
saw walking down the hall. How connected to emotions he was even at that age,
Yeah.
and what type of man he is probably today, because dad showed him affection, dad showed him emotion.
Yeah.
Dad said, ain't nothing wrong with me loving my son.
Yeah.
And I had to change my framework, my
Mhm.
thinking, because I was like, oh my God, I had
Wow.
never seen that in it. In that little boy connected with that young boy that I was teaching at that moment, and recognizing like, wow, these are the people who lead us. Those
Yeah.
people who are emotionally well, those people
Yeah.
who know how to ask for what they want or what they need. But
Yeah.
typically they are allowed to be expressive.
Yeah. And I know that there are boundaries and there are some things that we don't
Ooh,
do, but I definitely agree with you that we have to change our mindsets
definitely.
about some things, because when that dad kissed him, that
Mhm.
sent messages that he didn't even have to say.
Come on.
He didn't even have to say. And sometimes I've heard so many people say, "Oh, we don't even say I love you because we know we love each other."
That's my family. I'm gonna just
What?
put it. I'm gonna just put it out there, Linda. That's my fault. You know I love you. Didn't I tell you 20 years ago?
And aggressive with it. I'm just asking if you can say I love you and
No, that's
affirm me, because you know what? That goes so far.
it
It
goes
doesn't
really.
mean that I don't know, but when I'm out here in this world, and I want to push it back to our black men.
Yes, yes.
Black men have so much to face out
Mm,
here in the world.
mm-hmm.
When they have that person they talk to on a regular basis, and you end the phone call with, I love you,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
that means
Oh,
something.
it
Can
means
I
a
get
lot.
my brothers in the chat box
Come
to
on,
back
brothers.
me in this? That means something.
Mm-hmm. It
That
means a
means
lot.
something. Yes.
It
And
means a
so
lot.
and it doesn't have to be your boo or your
It
husband.
does
We
not.
can say to our brothers, I tell my brothers,
Mm-hmm.
I love you,
Exactly.
because that's important. It's important.
Linda, it's probably the last maybe 10, 15 years I've started saying I love you. And I'm saying to myself, I don't care how you receive it. I need to say
Mhm.
it so I know that you know.
Yeah.
And I can't ever feel like I didn't say it. And you know what? I changed. I changed the trajectory within my family system,
Yes.
because I said, I'm uncomfortable, but I'm going to do it because it's so necessary. And when I'm in session, oftentimes, Linda, I'm going to be honest. Sometimes I recognize I'm the first person who unabashedly has listened to that black man in front of me. And so oftentimes there is a connection, a bond that's there,
Mhm.
a
Oh,
open,
that's
vulnerable
right.
trust, that I don't think I ever received from my counterparts, because we know us.
Yeah.
We know how hard it is to enter the room. We
Yes.
know how hard it is to share our truths. And I will never disrespect or dishonor that. And I
Ooh.
always tell them, I said, a lot of things that you may have seen, done, experienced, I have some experience with it. Or I know someone in my family who's experienced it. I have not arrived. Come on with the prayer. Come on, look. I
It's
have
getting hot in this elephant
really
room.
hot in this elephant room.
Woo!
I have not arrived.
Yes. Because we're all on a journey.
We
We're
are.
all on a journey. We're all on
Mhm.
a journey. I want to shift gears, and I want you
Yeah.
to go a little further on your journey and tell us you then lost your sister.
Yes. Yes. I lost my sister about 4 years ago. And again, in our culture, we're taught to be strong, to not talk about different things. And so I remember in having several conversations, like right up until her death. And she's like, I say, how you doing? Oh, I'm good. You would think she was ready for the Olympics, how she was sounding.
Wow.
She said, I'm good. And here I am walking to my school building, getting a call from my sister and my other sister, and they're saying they said that this is all that they can do for her. And I'm like, huh? Little boy comes back up.
Just like that.
Just
You were
like
triggered.
that. Just like that. The messaging for me is, if I can be candidly honest, I was not good enough to be told the truth. Little boy, even Danny at upper age with my sister.
Wow.
And to this day, I'm like, did I imply? Did I make her feel as though she couldn't share? Those types of things. And so, like, when we're talking about Black men, I oftentimes tell the guys, I said, it's great to have this here, but we have to practice vulnerability. We have to practice asking questions. We have to practice opening up. And that's the reason I formed the Brotherhood. That's the reason I formed Intense, because it's great to talk to me and I become somewhat, in a sense, I put in the air quotes, a best friend or somebody you talk to.
You trust.
Yeah, you trust. And I'm not a best friend, but honestly, if you really look at it, sometimes I'm like, I don't know if they necessarily need therapy more so than somebody they can trust to talk to.
Yeah.
And I'm just
they
like,
need to coach Danny.
They get the coach. They get the coach. And so one of the things that I like for them to do is to practice and work on vulnerability, using language that really shares what it is you're feeling. We got to go beyond I'm mad, I'm happy, I'm sad. No, give me the nuances of what you're feeling.
Yes.
I feel unseen. I feel unheard.
Yes.
When you do this makes me feel as though you're angry or upset with me.
That's good.
We have to learn how to have those conversations that truly articulate what my heart is feeling. And you know what we do, though? When we feel rejected, we retreat. That is the biggest thing that we work on, lessening that retreating and you giving yourself a voice.
Ooh, because sometimes when you act like you're angry or you say you're angry, you're really not angry.
Exactly.
You're really not angry. You're hurt or something else, but you're not angry. I want to make sure that the listeners caught that snippet that you touched and moved over.
Okay.
You said when you got the news about your sister, the little boy showed up again. And I want to make sure the listeners see clearly that the same thing that happened to Danny, the 4-year-old boy, is what happened to the older man, Danny, when his sister passed away. Nobody talked to him as dad was ill and passed away. And as an adult man, the sister said, I'm fine. Nobody talked to him until she had passed away. So it was really the same storyline repeated in his life. And I think oftentimes we are triggered by things that happened in our younger years. And there's a listener saying, I know that feeling all too well.
Exactly.
But if we don't address it, if we don't see the pattern of behavior, if we don't see the triggers, we will continue to respond like the 4-year-old boy.
You know, and I have this quote that I want to read out to you, and it kind of goes with what you're talking about.
Let's get it.
All that acting hard, but I can't help but see that little boy coming out.
Ooh, give it to us again.
All that acting hard, but I can't help but see that little boy coming out. And I go on to talk about, ever notice how guys sometimes put up that hard facade, but if you look closer, you can see that little boy inside is peeking through. And just a heads up, we have to peel back those layers. We have to peel back those different layers of, I'm not good enough. Can I do it? I don't know about this, or I don't know about that, or giving them that platform of safety. So many of our ills are connected to our earlier messaging.
Mhm.
I do a lot of work with of messaging, transactional analysis theory. And I think so much of what we experience growing up, especially as men, we have these transcripts that we have received from our parents. And sometimes the transcripts are just jacked up.
They
They just jacked up.
they
We
are.
we are trying to do certain things that that we hate, and then we're passing it on to children and family members. And I'm just like, I come in session, I'm like, did you like that growing up? So why you know what? I really don't. I say try something different. It's
Yeah,
okay.
change it.
It's okay for the child to become an adult. And what we want is we want adult to adult, not child to parent. And so what tends to happen in our relationships, in our businesses, in our work relationships, in our friendships, sometimes we're showing up as child to parent. The parent represents that authority figure, that person who told me what I can become, what I cannot become. And when that child comes through, you know how we act as children. We say whatever we want to say. Our emotions are unbridled. We talk crazy because we're allowing that little boy, that little child to speak for us. And what I try to give permission. I say, you know what? You get to be an adult now. And if you were to be the adult in your life right now, talking to another adult, this is what I want to hear what you would say as the adult, transforming yourself from that child self to the adult self, talking to they're just an adult too now. Your
Wow.
parents.
That's so good. That's so good. And sometimes I think people don't want to say that what my parents did or what they said wasn't healthy because we think it means they're bad parents. Well, let me just go on in the elephant room tell the whole
Go
truth.
ahead. Go ahead.
Sometimes, many times, how they did it, they left scars.
They left
There were
scars.
some unhealthy things that were done. I'm not saying mama didn't do the best she could. I'm not
Exactly.
saying daddy didn't do the best he could, but his best left scars.
That's
And
good.
we got to deal with those scars. We cannot afford to continue to stay in that rut and say, well, that's just how it is. Well, that's just how it is. Danny, you said it best. I give you permission
Yes.
to be an adult, take charge, and do it differently.
It set some boundaries.
Yeah. And heal.
And heal.
And grow. And move forward. If it did not feel good then, why would you continue to relive it and replay it and do that thing to yourself now as an adult?
It's interesting you talk about like some of the things that are unhealed and those things that we continue to do. I sometimes I think about that we take care of everybody else. We make sure everybody else is doing okay. And this is something I talk about in the brotherhood. I say, we're at a point in our lives. It's time we got to save something for ourselves. You wondering why you want to cheat. You wonder why you overeat. You wondering why you over here gaming all the time because you don't have anything left for yourself. I'm all about taking care of your family, but it has to have some balance. You have to be a part of the equation. And you have to talk about your needs. And so what tends to happen is their needs come out in a more destructive kind of way sometimes.
Yes.
Talked about. So
let's give some examples, Danny, of what that destruction looks like when we're trying to meet our needs.
Overeating, outside relationships.
We call that cheating.
Come on. We're gonna put it out there like that.
Put it out there.
Cheating, always gone from home. You just, I'm, always just busy.
Yeah.
You ain't that
busy doing nothing.
Come on.
Busy doing nothing. How much time can you spend at the barber shop, brother?
Come on. You can't. You cannot spend that much time. So those are the kind of things that I can't be sometimes gentle about it. I have to call it out because sometimes
Yes.
we won't see it if we're so gentle about it. I'm not disrespectful, but I do call out those behaviors that are not healthy. And I'm always like, what would it be like if you actually had the conversation you needed to have with the person who's hurting you? I say you go home to your trigger every day or every night and you just go home and you just take it. I say, is that sustainable?
It's not. And sometimes you're the trigger. We deep in the elephant room now, Danny. We might as well go on.
I have my fan up in here too. Come on now.
Sometimes I'm the trigger. Look, you don't need to always work 80 hours a week. What are you running from?
Oh, that's good.
What are you trying to prove, brother? Sometimes that unresolved grief, that pain, that whatever that we have not dealt with, we're covering it up. And you did it in a nice masculine way. So I'm gonna go on and bring the sister version to it.
Take it.
You got to take care of yourself.
You got to take
and
care. And
self-care is not just getting your edge done. Did I say that? Yes, I did.
Linda, like you go hard.
Did Jonathan say the elephant is running at this point?
He's stopping and hit. Oh my God. But
okay, self-care might mean you need to sit down and not game, but sit down and take a moment of quietness.
Yes.
Where you settle your thoughts. Mm-hmm. When was the last time you took time and just did something that you enjoyed, not to run away from the pain?
Exactly.
When was the last time you connected with you?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you're busy doing things that look good, but they're not good. Mm-hmm. They're not good because they're covering up your pain. If you're working all the time because you want to make sure that your children can wear the latest brand, you're stuffing the pain. Yeah, they're wearing the latest brand, but daddy is dying inside. This is why the suicide rate is increasing. Brothers, we need you to survive.
We need you to survive. You are so right. You're so right. And you know, I do want to say this. I think as men, we learn how to function in the dysfunction. And I was thinking about when I was grieving my sister and now my mom, you know, you learn how to put on that face. You learn how to show up. But I always tell people, when you don't heal, when you don't allow yourself to feel the pain, the hurts, those emotions that come with losing those precious things. Or sometimes we learn how to, like we were talking about, functioning in those unhealthies. We learn how to just do that, and then it kills us.
Oh,
it kills us.
Dead. And not always physically.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it kills who you are, and you lose yourself. You lose yourself and become somebody that you never wanted to be.
Exactly. Linda, I just spoke to someone. I said, you know, you were a person before you were in this relationship. Who is that person? Who is that person? We have settled into this imagery, this ideology of who we're supposed to be, so much to where we've lost what it is that really matters to us, which is us.
To me, the most important person in your life is not your spouse. It is not your children. It is you. If there is no you, all the other stuff doesn't matter.
Come on.
It doesn't matter. In this business about staying into these toxic situations because, well, I've given it 10 years or 20. What?
I'm with you. I'm like,
what?
Okay. You gonna give another 10?
You are dying. Right. Literally, you are dying. Your dreams, your visions, your joy, your peace.
Mm-hmm.
You are dying. And while I'm out here,
go out there.
While I'm out here, let me go on and say this. I believe many of our brothers are grieving the childhood they never got.
I totally 150% agree with you.
So it may not be a person that you lost, but you didn't get your fair shake.
It's interesting you mentioned that, Linda. I was in the Brotherhood, something came up one time, and I was telling them about like sometimes you show up as this version of yourself, as what it means to be a black man. Am I black enough? That's one right there for me. And we learned how to play these different roles. And one of the brothers was like, I showed up this way as this, I gotta say the word out, this hard ass. But secretly, I wanted to be who you were. That kid who made good grades. That kid who did what was supposed to be done. That kid that the teacher thought highly of. And I never thought about the other side of like, because I'm like, you fit in. You're doing everything that I wanted to be. And he's like, but where did that get me?
But it goes back to wanting to be seen. Wanting to be validated. So I'm not going to be who I am so that you can see me, because who I really want to be, you're not going to notice. Well, guess what? I was the girl going to the library. Okay. Okay.
Exactly.
And it's okay. Okay. Jonathan is now running with the elephants.
I love it, Jonathan. Run with us. We up in here running. We taking off.
Jonathan is now running. He said the elephants are not just running. He is now running with the elephants.
Linda, you said it. We got to do a part 2. There is no way.
The time is already gone, but we got to squeeze in the piece about you losing your mother.
Ooh, man. Ooh, losing my mom was an identity change for me. If I can sum it up in anything, I was telling someone the other day, I said, when I lost my mom, I didn't realize how much you lose and how much is connected to who that person represents in your life. In my mind, I'm like, I can always go to my mama's house.
Wow.
Something that simple, Linda. I can't go to my mama's house like that. My mama's house is there. But my mama ain't in it.
Not there.
With that safety that now she cuts up and clown and cat on. But I knew there was a space for me. I knew I was going to be taken care of. And I knew that she'd get me back to where I needed to be. I have always gone home and my mom would speak a word into me and with her smart mouth. But she was.
Let me tell you, Danny, we're going to have to go over tonight because one of my faithful listeners said he's been waiting on this part right here. Wow. Okay. There are people I know that I see on this live that have lost their mom, and some of them lost their mom early on their journey. And how long has it been since you lost your mom?
It hasn't been. It's November 7th of this past year. What is that? 23 November 7th of this past year.
So it hasn't even been a year for you.
Hasn't been a year. But you know what I'm thankful for, Linda, is it taught me a lot. It taught me how to slow down. It taught me how to be present in the moment. It taught me how to be a better listener. My mom had Alzheimer's, but the fighter in her taught me so much because I could tell like she was still trying to hold on to those memories and let you know that she was still in charge. I was telling someone God granted us such a peaceful transition because she never really got down as to what you see with Alzheimer's to like, I guess I would say 4 or 5 months. You really noticed it then. But you know, there are people who live with that for years. And it's
a hard illness.
It's a hard way to live. And I equate it to, even then, mom was setting a standard.
Wow.
she was showing me like life goes on. She would always say that life goes on. She would always have the conversation. I'm not going to be here every day. And I'll be honest, those types of conversations, and she said, when I can't take care of myself, I want you to take me to a nursing home. She would say things like that. You know how that relinquished that burden for me.
That's good.
My mom was my everything.
And
My
one of
mom,
the listeners says that his mom was his safe space.
come on,
His
come
safe
on.
space. I want you to talk about, we talked about men having a difficult time being vulnerable.
Mm,
We didn't talk about how Black boys and men are told that men don't cry.
mm.
But
Yeah.
what would you say to the brother who has a difficult time being vulnerable and emotional, but yet has lost so much in their
Hmm.
mom? What would you say to him?
Honestly, are you going to continue to lose? At some point, you have to open up. You have to recognize there's a lot that you've lost. There's a lot that you've seen. There's a lot that you've witnessed. And you actually have to give it words. You actually have to talk to someone who can help you process that in a way. I ain't talking about your boys. I ain't talking about your sisters. Going into the nuances of what that person meant, what was the unsaid things that needed to be said, what would you do now if you had that person in front of you? There are so many mechanics and things that going to session can offer you that your typical friend won't be able to help you with. And then I'm trained in EMDR, and so I tell people, trauma, death is trauma. Death is trauma. And I think as Black men, we've experienced so much trauma that has become so normalized to where, oh, I just lost my aunt over here. I just lost my dad. And then you go back to work 2 days later. Bro, that ain't normal. That ain't typical. That is not
Mm.
how you take care of yourself.
Go back to
And
that self-care.
self-care, self-care. So Linda, this represents trauma. And sometimes we're walking around with this ball of trauma, but there are extensions of the trauma. What
Mm.
was shared with me as a kid, what was not shared with me as a kid, those words that were told to me, I won't amount to anything, those things that made me feel so small. And then on top of that, I'm gonna give, maybe you had one or two nice things said to you, but you got five other things that overshadowing everything else in your life.
So good.
But you walk around with this big ball of trauma. And what we have to do, we got to deal with each one of those
Yeah.
extensions of the trauma.
Yes.
Each one. And some of us got 10, some of us got 12 extensions of the trauma.
Yes.
But we try to come in, and this is us as men. We come in, okay, I got trauma. That's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna fix that. Okay, we just acknowledging it today. We got to work on each one. What
Yes.
is the meaning behind it? How do we make sure that we don't transfer that in other relationships? So many different things. So we have to stop normalizing trauma, stop normalizing pain, and actually deal with it and process it with people who can help us.
There's only one other thing I'm going to ask because I know
Sure.
we're almost out of time, but I
Okay.
have to ask this. What about the brothers who have lost the mother or father, because we're
Mhm.
talking about grief, and they had unhealthy relationships before the person passed away, unresolved issues.
Mhm.
They had all this stuff, and now the person's gone.
Exactly. Exactly.
Can they
Um,
still work through that?
Oh, definitely. You can work through that a lot. I do this little, I went to a workshop and learned some things, but it's a version of empty chair. And
I love the empty chair, by the way.
me too. But it gives us this opportunity to have that dialogue with the person who is no longer there. And sometimes it's so needed. Sometimes we can use journaling, but you need to process those things with a trained professional, because if you don't do it with a trained professional, sometimes we can get ourselves in a space to where we can't come out of it, in a sense. Yeah. And so it's so important that we work with someone who's trained in grief and who can help us. But there is hope. There's definitely hope.
Danny, this was so good. Jonathan has stopped running with the elephants and stopped long enough to tell us it's a marathon, not a sprint. Thank you, Jonathan. Yes, we appreciate you. Yes. Thank you all for being here. There are so many things I wanted to talk about. We have not even started talking about it. I wanted to talk about the barriers to healing, the generational trauma. How do we redefine the strength that we need to move forward? The faith. How does our faith play a part? We have got to come back together in the elephant room for a part 2. We have to do it.
Linda, I do want to share with you. Let me show you. There is a link, though. I did do, it's called Breaking the Chains of Silence. It's a little online workshop, and it deals with grief that men deal with. And you can go to my website. That's themessages.net, and you can get that for free. It's an e-course. It's like 30 minutes.
Give it to us again, Danny.
That's themessages, THEMESSAGES.net. And you're going to go, .net. That's it. That's all you need.
It won't be next week because we have somebody else scheduled, but I'm going to get with Danny, and we're probably going to not be on a Thursday night. Okay. We'll probably give you some leftovers from the elephant room and do a special edition, maybe like a Sunday night or something.
Oh, I like that.
We will definitely let you know. Part 2, you're in. Thank you. We appreciate you. Yeah. I'm going to ask Danny to share all of his social media handles and ways that you can connect. And I want you to let brothers know from everywhere that they can connect with you, because you see Brothers. He is a licensed therapist. This is not some fly by night, y'all. He's a licensed therapist, which is very different than some of the stuff that you're experiencing otherwhere. I'm just going to say that. And he has a brotherhood group. He's doing some things virtually, some things in person if you're in the DFW. So how can they find you, Danny?
They can go. I have 2 websites. My website for advocacy is themessages.net. That's the one I just mentioned. And then if you want counseling, you can go to dlrcounselinggroup.com. That's dlrcounselinggroup.com. And you can get in touch with me. We are sponsoring what we call a super intense weekend. It's just going to be a small, intimate setting, October 11th and the 12th, only $100. You're going to have amazing facilitators. I'm going to do some breakdowns of some things related to some daddy issues. I know that's one of the topics. And we're going to talk about communication and relationships. So October 10th and 11th, you want to get those tickets. They're on Eventbrite right now. So if you want more information, just connect with me.
For just $100, that's real good. That's real.
All the food.
Oh! All the food. Thank you so much, Danny. I appreciate you. It has been an amazing conversation. Until next time, y'all, take very good care of yourself. Make sure that you connect with us every Thursday night on YouTube or Facebook Live at Linda Carmouche for another episode of The Elephant Room.
Thanks for watching this episode of The Elephant Room. Make sure you like and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform for more powerful insights, down-to-earth conversations, and the courage to face whatever comes your way. This is where vulnerability meets strength and transformation gets real.